Welcome back everyone. Cube e-bike on the stand today. Issues with the rear derailleur. Chains fell off and you can see from the angle of this derailleur it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It should be sprung back in this position. So there's an issue with inside the pivot here. Bike's also done over 5,000 kilometers and it's still the original chain and original cassette. So on an e-bike that's going to be absolutely toast. Let's have a look. This is a Derailleur derailleur. It's a very popular derailleur. This is 11 speed. The clutch on or off, it doesn't make any difference here. Take the clutch off and you can see this is seized in place. There's a very, very strong spring in here. This should be flying back to sort of almost here at the moment. So the issue is obviously within this pivot. So the derailleur will need to come off. We're also going to measure the chain. I don't even need to measure it. I can tell you this completely worn out. Service the derailleur, get a new cassette and chain fitted and get it back on the road. We'll check the chain. This is the Unior tool that I use. So we'll just drop this pin in. So we drop the tool in and turn it. It should stop at less than 1. I'll show you the figures. As you can see, this is just continuing around and round and round. So it's totally worn out. So the numbers on this tool start at 0 and then go around to 0.25. You'll find on this tool even a brand new chain shows 0.25. I'm not quite sure how they calibrate it, but you get to know what it does. 0.5 obviously. 0.75 is where you're looking at changing your chain. 1% is completely worn out, and this is off the scale. It's somewhere in this range here, so it's not even measuring on the scale. I'll show you on a traditional one as well. This is the sort of thing you'll pick up yourself quite cheaply. So you just drop it into the 0.75 hole here, and if that drops through like that, that's time to change your chain. Flip it over and try 1%. If it goes to the 1%, you're too late. We know this does straight through the 1%. So we definitely need a new chain. And when you're over 1%, you're automatically going to change your cassette because, believe you me, there's no way it's going to mesh properly. It's just going to skip like crazy. Typical e-bike cassette, you can see they're only using the sort of lowest range sprockets here. These top 3 big sprockets look like they've never been used. So unfortunately, you still got to buy a new cassette just to change these here. You can buy these individual 3 sprockets for some Shimano cassettes. The price difference between the 3 sprockets that you could potentially buy and the full cassette isn't that different. So you just as well to change the whole cassette. We're going to get the derailleur off, get this cassette off, see which model it is. I'll show you how to check which model you've got. And we'll order a cassette. I'm not going to have this one in stock. We'll get that for a next day delivery. In the meantime, we'll get this derailleur off and see what's going on. I'm not concerned that the chains fell off at all. That's just purely because of the tension lost in the derailleur. So when we fit a new chain, obviously that'll take care of itself. Just going to look for the split link if we can find it through the lubrication. It's a bit over lubricated, this bike, but there's a split link there. So we'll just clip that off. Just shift this down the cassette and then we can get the chain off a bit easier. It's locked against the big sprocket at the moment. The chain is trapped between the chainring and the frame here, so we're going to pull some pieces off here rather than just pulling it out and damaging stuff. We'll just take this chain set off, or the chainring at least. Chain guard should just unclip. There's no screws on this one. I don't like these things at all. Right, it just pops out of here. You gotta be really careful with chain guards. They tend to be very, very fragile. And this one, it just clips out. There's no screws. It'll come off when this crank comes off. Take the bolt out, then just use a crank puller to remove the crank arm, get this cover off, and get chain ring off to get the chain off. Not ideal when they get wedged through here. You probably can pull it out, but like I say, you're just going to damage so much stuff, it's not worth it. That's off. Chain guard is pretty much off. Just leave it on this one here, spin it out of the way. So you can see the chain is wedged down here now. Might come off now, I've took this chain guard off, actually. Yeah, that's off, good. Didn't need much. You see these clips, this is just where this guard, they literally just push on here. Normally you've got screws, but this one's just a push fit thing. Just be really, really careful not to break it because you're not gonna get one of these without going to probably cube themselves, which is a nightmare. Chain guards tend to be very specific to the bike. I'm just levering this in against that, like that, there you go. You've got one, there you go, so that's on. Just refit this crank now, put some grease in here because this is very, very dry as you can see. Just get this wheel out, drop your derailleur down to its highest gear position. This is on a quick release, this one, so it's nice and easy. Here we go, super easy. Check the brake pads while the wheel's off, so there's loads of life left on these. So on the cassette, normally you'll get the information you need off here. This is some race cassette on this one. It's 11 tooth, all you need to do is count the sprocket size on the biggest one. So then we know it's an 1151, I think, on this one. You can see that it's 51 written on there. Otherwise you can just physically count them. So it's an 1151, 11 speed. Shimano Hyperglide type fitting cassette. You can see this is loose as well, this lock ring is loose. Don't even think I'm going to need a tool to get this off. Probably unscrew that by hand. I'll get one anyway. I still got it. It's off. So it's only these 3 sprockets down here, 3 or 4 sprockets that wear, because obviously the smaller sprockets touch the chain more often, basically, so wear faster than the bigger sprocket. So you can see sort of how many revolutions you would take to go around that. This would all just come straight off now in a million bits on this one. Doesn't matter. Right, we know what we need. Get the derailleur off now. The cable's in good condition, so what we're going to do here is undo this pinch bolt and try and get it through with this end cap on, just in case you've not got a spare. Obviously I've got about 54,000 spares, but to show you what you can do. That should just pull through this hole. No, it won't. Just pull it through like that and it'll knock it off. Put a fresh one on when we put it back together. This derailleur can come off now. Just a 5mm bolt here. Shouldn't normally be that tight. Good. I'm going to start stripping this down. Just check this derailleur hanger tight while you're here. Yeah, that's good. First thing we're going to do is just take these jockey wheels off. Just keep the top and bottom one separate, because sometimes the bolts are slightly different length, etc. So we shouldn't need a new derailleur on this. I'm pretty confident we can get this running. Look at the clutch as well while we're here. Get that serviced. Right. On this part tool bench, there's 2 holes here for your coffee cups, but I found them quite useful for derailleur pulleys, top, bottom. Right, we don't need the cage. Talking about this part tool table, I've had this nearly 3 years now. It's absolutely indestructible. Really, really, really good quality. Guess you get what you pay for. Right, get the jockey wheels off. I'm going to take this clutch off. Take these screws off here. Make sure your clutch is off when you do this. It's easy to pull the whole thing off then. This is the lever. That's on. That's off. So the clutch, all the clutch does is basically put a lot more tension on the derailleur cage. If you're bouncing down the side of a mountain, it stops the derailleur cage and chain flapping around all over the place. If you're on the road, it really doesn't make much difference still. Right, so that's the clutch there. This should now just pull off. Yep. So the longer part of this goes at the top. And the orientation of this, so you've got sort of 0.5 mm at the top, pretty much flush at the bottom. We are going to take this apart and grease it. I'll show you how to do that. This is the clutch mechanism itself. All it does is grip this shaft here. So there's a 4mm bolt in here. Right, so that's how we get this knuckle off. So just put them in there like that. It's T27, 4mm, and twist against each other, and it should undo there. There you go. There's a big spring in here, so just be careful. Like that. So we'll put all this in the ultrasonic now, give it a good clean. We're not putting the clutch in the ultrasonic, just the rest of the pieces here on the jockey wheels. Clutch cover can go in, but not the clutch itself. So I'll get these washed now. This shaft here just pulls out, so still need to change the fluid on my ultrasonic. It's not doing a great job at the moment, but it helps. This plate goes on here. The other thing would make it easy when you're taking it apart, rather than the spring just exploding on. If you take this screw out here, you can then unwind the derailleur. We'll need to do that to put it back together, but take it out now, it's fine. Alright, let's just finish cleaning these up with a nylon brush. These stiff nylon brushes are really good for this sort of thing. They don't damage anything, but they get everything off. Really good. Who makes this one? Roughneck. Really good. So just go for reassembly now. We're going to use some Shimano premium grease on this one. Get this spring, give it just a generous coat in it. Really doesn't do a great deal, but just helps prevent any corrosion or anything. Just coat that in there. This washer, this set on the base of this plate here. It goes on there. And we have the spring that goes in this body, this pivot in. Get some grease in this. Keep this top half clean because it's for the clutch. That doesn't want grease in it. We'll clean it when we put it back together, but this bit here needs some lubrication. It just pushes through like that. There you go. So this flat piece of the spring sits in this groove here. Cover, that just sits in the groove as well. That just locates down in there. And we can put the cage back on. So I've took this screw out now because we're going to need to wind that on. There's one hole on here. Some of the really old derailleurs, there used to be a couple of holes here where you could sort of select a different spring tension. So just push that through there. I'm going to bolt this 4mm onto there loosely. Just get it started. Like that. And then we need to wind this around to get the tension back in the spring. Like I say, when you take it apart, try and do this first, otherwise, as I showed you, it just blows up in your hand like that. So then you're trying to overcome the tension of this spring here, so you need to sort of wedge it in your hand, keep it open while you get this screw back in. I'm going to put a little drop of Loctite in this, Try and get it on a screwdriver so you can hold it, because it's a bit fiddly otherwise. There you go. It just drops in. And tighten this back up. Done. This is the spring tension we should be getting. Now it's been reassembled. Very strong spring in this. When it came in, remember it was stuck in this position here. We're doing very little, which is why the chain was slack and fell off. So that's good. Now I need to put the clutch back on. This seal just drops back in. It can only go one way. So the clutch itself, so we get the top part here with the longest one, and then just get a flat bladed screwdriver. Push that in gently. And then this will drop out like that. The only part we're greasing on this is these bands here. Again, we're going to clean it first. There's no grease on there at all at the moment. So Shimano make a specific grease for this. I think really probably any light grease will do, but don't quote me on that. I only ever use this one. So we're just going around. Again, just keep the center clean. We definitely don't want grease on the center part. It's clean in here already. Then we just drop that back in. We know this is the top. That's where the screwdriver came in. And we remember there was about 0.5 millimeter at the top and almost flush at the bottom, so we just set that to where it was. Doesn't make a huge difference, but it needs to be somewhere close. Line up this rectangular part with this pin, and it should just drop on quite easily with the clutch in the off position on the derailleur. Just drops on like that, pretty easy. Make sure this piece here sits, there's a little groove it sits in. Make sure it sits in there nice and squarely. This is the clutch off. Press your finger on it, otherwise it's just going to pop out sometimes. You'll see this pin here turning. What that does is squashes this spring, which puts the clutch on. It can be adjusted on this screw here for tightness, but generally speaking, especially on a bike like this, which is just basically a road bike, you're never going to need to adjust that. So you watch that again, just close that lever, pinches that spring, which pinches this shaft. Pretty simple mechanism. Make sure the gasket's still in there, and just drop the cover back on. And just drop your 3 screws back in. So the amount of people I see with these bikes, and I ask them, do you use the clutch? I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, so I wouldn't worry about it too much if you don't know this, because you probably got it and you don't use it, and you don't even notice the difference. Like I say, the only real difference you would use this for is if you're really professionally sort of off-roading, mountain biking, and you're bouncing down the side of a very rocky thing. It's keeping control of the chain tension on there, but in normal use, it makes virtually no difference really, in my opinion. So that's the clutch on now. That feels really good, nice and tight. Clutch off. The normal sort of derailleur. It's easier to demonstrate when it's back on the bike. So just put the jockey wheels back on now, and this derailleur is pretty much rebuilt. So we'll go for the top one first. What you're looking for on the top one, obviously we did separate them, but should you got them mixed up, you're looking for G pulley, which is the top G guide pulley. A little bit of grease on this. It really makes, in my opinion, again, not a great deal of difference on these. The higher end derailleurs have sealed cartridge bearings in here, but on these they're just very basic bushes. Some of these are directional as well, so make sure you check for an arrow. There's nothing on this, so it just goes on either way. 2 plates in here. These always corrode, unfortunately, but again, they are very, very rudimentary seals, so don't stress about them too much. So there's the top jockey wheel already. Get your cage, get the top bolt. Remember we separated them. Put a little bit of Loctite on the 242. Basically anything that's blue really should be fine. Drop this bolt through the cage. Thread your jockey wheel onto the bolt like that, and then we can just get it into this hole here. Let's get that started with an Allen key. Good. Bottom one back in. A bit of grease again. A couple of rusty cages. Loctite on the bolt, or you can put it in the thread of the cage. You can do both if you really want. Thread this through there. Just use an Allen key to line things up. Then you can drop the bolt through. Make sure you get it started. That's in there. I'm just going to tighten those up. I've got Loctite, but they do need to be tight, obviously not, but just not crazy. You can see our little thread it's threading into, so don't go bonkers. Probably 3 or 4 Newton meters. That's good. Right, done. These derailleurs are super cheap at the moment. I've just ordered the Cassette, and they're doing these derailleurs on offer at the moment with £29, which is probably, I don't know, about $50 in the US. Pretty cheap. So I'll grab one as well, just as a spare. I don't really carry any sort of higher end derailleurs. Generally speaking, I carry a lot of Acera and Altus stuff and Tawny, just for the cheap bikes that get smashed off. But for that sort of price, it's worth keeping one in stock. This one's fine, good to go. So we're just going to refit. There's some grease on the bolt there. Be careful of this. This is for the B stop. It goes against here like this. So when you refit it, make sure you don't screw it onto the frame like that. You could attach this to the frame with this round here by accident, and it would let you do it. But then the B-stop screw would be hitting the tab on the dropout instead of the tab on the derailleur. It would still work, but you can see how much difference there would be because it needs to hit both of these, not just that one. So make sure that's in the right place and then just refit. Sits there like that. Good. So if you look, this is no clutch now. Pretty easy. I'm just moving that with my broken thumb, arthritis. Put this clutch back on. There's massively more increased resistance on that there, but it's smooth. If you feel this jerky like do like this, then the clutch needs servicing. This is very, very tight, but it's also very, very smooth, so that's fine. So take that clutch off again. Big difference. And that's pivoting lovely on there. So that's good. So now all we need to do is wait for the new cassette, which is coming tomorrow. Refit the wheel with a new cassette, put the chain on, just set the gears, obviously refit this cable. So what I'm going to start doing is showing you what tools I've used to do a particular job, even a full service. I'm trying to keep all the tools out that we've used for one service. So degreaser on this, premium grease for the derailleur you saw, shadow derailleur grease for the clutch mechanism, chain pliers to get the chain off, Loctite for the jockey wheel bolts, T27 to get the derailleur apart in conjunction with a 4mm Allen key, 5mm Allen key to get the derailleur off the frame, 3mm to get the jockey wheels on and off with a 3mm ratchet to get them nice and tight, 2mm Allen key to get the clutch cover off, flat bladed screwdriver to open the clutch up, and a JIS screwdriver for the little pin to separate the derailleur plates. Always use JIS if you can on any Shimano bikes. It fits a lot better than Phillips screws, doesn't damage it. Don't need a fancy one like this, but you can. JIS are not quite so easy to get. Vessel makes very good ranges as well. I used to have them somewhere, I think I have. You will get normal part tool screwdrivers. These are not JIS, I don't believe. These are normal Phillips screwdrivers. Highly recommend getting JIS, which is just a very, very slightly different tip. So I'm going to try and cover off any tools that we're using on services, just to give you an idea of the sort of range that you might need if you're trying to set up your own sort of workshop or do something similar. Obviously cassette tools as well to get the cassette on and off. So new cassette's arrived, so let's just bang this on. Line these up, there's a big fat one here matching the fat one on here. Basically just line it up, drop it on. Super easy on this. Like that. Top sprocket separate, and then just the lock ring, and we're done. I'll put a Shimano unit on this one this time instead of the Sunrace that was on there, but same spec. We got rid of that play that we had there. Obviously it's a new cassette in one piece. That's in. Just going to thread this cable back through now. Almost there. Just got to be careful when you're working with cables that have been used that you don't start fraying this end up. As long as you're careful, you can normally get away with it. So it's in perfectly good condition, so there's no point changing it for changing's sake. And this just goes around the back of this plate. A little bit fiddly on this one. And out the back there. Just loosely nip this up and we'll get some pliers and pull it through with a bit of tension. Obviously make sure your shifter is in 12th gear position. Otherwise you'll be doing it all over again. So I'm just going to pull a little bit of tension on this. Don't pull it so hard that, well, if you pull it too hard, all you're doing is, look, you're moving the derailleur up. So you're setting the gear in the wrong position then. So you're just pulling it tight enough just to get some tension, but not tight enough to start actually moving the derailleur over. And then just nip this up. Get a little bit more tension on there. We're just going to try the gear lever one position. That's going to work perfectly. All right. If we're happy with that, we can tighten this down now. Put an end cap on. Black on this, is the majority of the bike is black. Apart from the shiny cassette. So I've already cut this new chain. You can see the difference in length between the old one and the new one. Nearly an inch difference. Crazy. So all these side plates obviously should line up. This one was here. You can see how much it's stretched. All the way down there. This is way over 1% wear, so it takes the cassette with it. So you have to change them both, unfortunately. All right, let's get this on. So I'm just going to pop this chain guard off again. It's just going to make life a bit easier. Like that. Like that. So just be easy to fit the chain there. Same on any Shimano higher end chains. There's writing on one side and not on the other. So the chain, so the side with the writing faces out, which is the drive side. So Shimano chains are very, very, very tight on these links. If they're not, they're probably a fake. It's insanely tight. Okay, let's put put the chain guard back on, check the gears. Okay, that's on. Try not to leave the customer's bike covered in oily fingerprints when you can help it. Big old cassette there, isn't it? Proper dinner plate job. Up one, down one. Too much tension there, you can hear that. At some point it's going to go up 2 sprockets now, like that. There's too much tension. It won't go down. So we'll just screw that in on the barrel adjuster on the handlebar. Right. Just screwed that all the way in on the barrel adjuster. We'll try again. Down to the bottom. Up one. This limit screws ever so slightly too wide, that's what that noise is. So you're going to screw that in to get rid of that noise. Just going to adjust that. So that's the high screw there. We can pedal that and screw it in at the same time to get rid of that noise. There you go, that's got rid of that one. Right, now we can try the gears. Effectively doing that, that's going to put some slack on this cable. Right, one flick should be going up now. Like I say, because we've made that adjustment, we've effectively made some slack in this cable, so we're going to use the barrel adjuster again to add some more. I'm turning that now. That goes up. Drop this down one and back up. Let's see how we go now. Still too much there, you can hear that. Way too much. Not good. I'm just going to check this B tension and adjustment because it looks wrong. It's a bit difficult to see, but on this Derailleur cage there's a line here. It says 51T. Basically that line there should be lined up with the end of the sprocket, so we can see it's way too low at the moment. So we need to adjust the B tension screw until that lines up with one of these sprockets. The Derailleur is far too far back at the moment like that, so we need to bring it forward to wrap this chain around the sprocket better, which will help with shifting obviously. So I'm just going to adjust this B tension, and you'll see that on the camera, hopefully we're just moving up. Right, just going to unscrew that now. It's moving up now. Miles out. Well, that's somewhere close to where it should be. Your camera angle might not show you, but that's where it should be. That line is level with this sprocket now. Let's try that. Well, let's try that again now we've done that B tension adjustment. Well, that's better. There you go, lovely. Tiny bit sluggish going down. I'm just going to wide that barrel adjuster in half a turn. Beautiful. Lovely, job done. Just going to lubricate the chain now. Just start your quick link and then one link at a time. It's a long chain this. That's another one wrapped up. Just goes to show you don't need to run out and buy brand new Derailleur. It's pretty simple, straightforward maintenance on these. You know, it's just a set of Allen keys really, and that's pretty much all you need. Strip it down, lube it up, and she's as good as new. So yeah, back on the road for this one. Thanks very much for watching.